Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, this is Andy Strickler. I am currently the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Connecticut College, located in New London, Connecticut. I've also worked in athletics and admissions at Kalamazoo College, Beloit College, Sinus College, and Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina.
I'm Mark Stucker, and I'm the founder and producer. Our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. We care deeply about your kid. We believe college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. We believe in being genuine and transparent. We are committed to covering a variety of topics, including the tough subjects. Thanks to your generosity, we're committed to providing a minimum of 10 hours of fresh, commercial-free content every month, with episodes every Monday and Thursday. We have a variety of co-hosts because we believe and value diverse perspectives. You're our listening family, and we get great joy every time we meet with you as we do our best to give you tools so your students can soar and reach their limitless potential. Good morning, friends. I am exuberant this morning. In fact, that word doesn't even feel like it does it justice. Maybe effervescent. Is that stronger than exuberant? Effervescent and exuberant. Let's go with that. So I'm coming back from an incredible trip to Baltimore. So much fun. Got to meet multiple podcast listeners, college counselors, families, and then St. Michael's. That was amazing. Just talking admissions with over 30 people for 2 complete full days. And I'm back. But you know what? Whoever coined home sweet home, they knew what they were talking about. It's always great to get back in your own home bed. And the garden needed some work. You know, you go away for 5 days. We don't have pets, but those of you who have pets, I guess you can relate, right? You go away for 5 days, you got a really needy pet. If you're picking them up from whatever, pet sitter or kennel. And Joy, my youngest daughter, she just got back literally this morning from 12 days in South Africa. She works at the Keenan Flagler Business School in UNC Chapel Hill, so she led a trip with some faculty members, and that was incredible. In fact, we're talking as soon as I get after we record this podcast. I can't wait to hear the details. Anitra's much improved, and a lot of you asked about that. Karis was here for 2 days. She's back in Raleigh now. It was great spending 2 days with her. And, you know, friends, I try really, really hard to keep the work I do at my company that I started, School Match for You, separate from the podcast. It's very intentional to sort of keep them separate. But I can't help but share something I'm really excited about. For 7 years, I have wanted to hire one who's just pretty incredible to help us out with the writing piece as a content writing specialist. And we got it done. It took a while, but we got it done, and pretty excited about that. You know, I told you I'm traveling for a month and a half, really from October 2nd all the way till November 15th. And a few people reached out and say, how can you travel that long? Don't you have to do work? Well, it's a work trip too, right? I plan my driving. I drive about 3 or 4 days, Monday through Friday when kids are in school. And then I do Zoom calls in the evening, but that's a heavy writing time. And there's no way that I can do all the writing and do all the travel at the same time. So I have other people on the writing team, but I really needed to add a superstar and was able to get that done. And I'm pretty excited about it. You know, I tell students, I think more students should be encouraged to go into entrepreneurship. And schools don't teach entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship is really incredible. It's the freedom that makes it so great. You know, I always tell people I get to work when I want, where I want, with whom I want. And it's priceless, the freedom. And so I always try to encourage entrepreneurship. And while I think I do a pretty good job of helping students with essays, it's not my favorite part of this process. My favorite part is helping build college lists, helping people work on admission strategy, like tactics and strategies, ways of improving their chances of getting in. And then scholarship strategy, that's always a lot of fun. And then just answer all the questions people have. So when you're an entrepreneur, you can kind of design your job to do the things that you absolutely love. Now you have to be patient. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur now 17 years. I couldn't just start out that way. It takes time to build it up to that. But it allows me to travel more, have more freedom, work with more students, do more podcasting, do a lot of stuff. So I'm really, really in a great mood, and I've got some very exciting announcements. So, quite a few. So, speaking of travel, I know you thought it was ambitious if you're a regular listener when we did 3 receptions in California in September and October of 24 and 4 receptions in Texas in April and May of 25. Well, the YCBK co-hosts, we are coming to you. We're coming to the Midwest. So let's first talk about Minneapolis, because that's probably going to be the biggest one. So that Minneapolis event went up on Friday on our website. It just got posted on Friday, and it is popping. People are signing up. So that event, Susan Tree's going to be there. Andy Strickler is going to be there. I'll be there. Jennifer Mandel, who works with me as a counselor and has been on the podcast multiple times, she'll be there. Elliot Felix, we've had on here twice as an author. He's going to be there. And Dan Curiel, who's a writer, policy expert, and higher ed specialist, an occasional contributor to the New York Times. He has his own college Substack. He signed up to come. So you're going to want to attend that. A lot of college counselors also are signing up. They're in for our national conference, NACAC, over 6,000 attendees. Just go to your collegeboundkid.com, see the events page, sign up. We can hold 75 at that, but places are moving fast. And then I just had this epiphany. Well, I've got this big 45-day drive. I'm going through some major areas. Why don't we do some more events? So I'm willing to do some more events if we have a volunteer step up and host. Now, what's involved in hosting? You provide the venue and you provide light refreshments. That's really it. Now, we've used all kinds of venues over the years. We've done schools. We've done houses of worship. We've done homes. We've done restaurants. We've done community centers. We've done Girl Scouts headquarters. We've done law offices. And the groups have been as small as 15, and we've gone over 100. So I'd say usually when they're in homes, they're usually 40, 30, 20, in homes. It just depends. So here's what I can do if somebody wants to host. So I could do a lunch event on Sunday, October 11th in the Madison area, because I'll be in Madison, Wisconsin, Sunday, October 11th. Sunday evening in Milwaukee, we could do something Sunday evening on the October 11th. And Jen Mandel will join me at either the Madison or the Milwaukee event. Then I'm going to be in Chicago for 3 days. Our longtime listeners know my good friend Dave, former co-host. I'm going to be staying with Dave for 3 days. I'll be there the 11th, 12th, and 13th, but I could do an event on the 12th or the 13th anywhere. City of Chicago, North Shore, West Shore. We have a lot of Illinois listeners if somebody wants to host. They're a lot of fun. And then finally, I just talked with Lisa earlier this week, and we're going to do an event if we have a host that steps up in the Research Triangle. That's Chapel Hill, Raleigh, Durham, Cary. That could be any day from October 23rd to October 31st. So if you're interested in being part of a gathering for your College Bound Kid listeners, just reach out to me. Text me, 404-664-4340, 404-664-4340, or you can email me at mark@schoolmatch4letteru.com. Basically what we do is we intermingle for like 30 minutes, sort of like cocktail party style, just socialize. Then we do an hour of questions. And when on the sign-up form, it asks you to put your questions. So we kind of go and see what questions came in. If we have time, we'll take additional ones from the audience as well. Have a few little prizes, a few little giveaways. So it could be books, could be different things that we do for people that ask questions. And then we kind of close it out, and then we just stay around for another 20 minutes or so if people want to kind of chit-chat some more. So that's pretty simple format. No PowerPoint, no presentation, informal. Lots of fun. We call ourselves a listening family, and it's fun when family members get together. All right. Speaking of events, this is your last time to sign up for the webinar that Mary LaChance and her brother, John Rooney, are doing. That is on June 1st, and that is at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. And they're going to be demoing College App Pro. It's a tool that helps your student with the college process. And it's only a one-time $10 fee, just to help for all the technology behind everything. I think you're going to really, really like it, and I encourage you to come out and learn what they're doing. I'm going to have more tools for you. Like there's a lot of cutting edge stuff that's going on out there, but this is one that, Mary's priced this to really just help people. just a few bucks to help cover technology costs. A lot of the other things out there are expensive. All right, let's talk about today's episode. So, as I mentioned to you, I was at a conference called No Name. There's 3 of these around the country, and they bring together senior level admissions people, senior level school-based counselors, and senior level private college coaches. And there's so many things I learned, and I'm going to share, but I'm never mentioning names because it's No Name. It'd be a complete violation of all ethics. I'd never be invited back. I'm going to draw off of the event that I was at, but I'm also going to draw off the other 2 events because they did do a summary of some of the things discussed at the other events. So in some cases, it's going to be me, what I experienced firsthand there, and some of it's going to be sort of the summary distillation from some of the other events. And you're going to be getting a lot of this content because there's a lot of stuff that was said, and I think I'm in tune with what our listeners value. So I'm just going through my notes, trying to pick out and extract the things that I feel were most helpful, that you'd be most interested in. And the first topic that I want to cover, and it's going to be this week and next week, is how AI, artificial intelligence, is changing the way admissions offices practice their craft. We've had multiple questions on this topic. We have said this is a space we need to revisit at least every 6 months, if not every 3 months, because things are happening and they're happening so fast. And so I'm going to be talking to you about that today and next week. And then I'll cover a lot of other topics. I can't even tell you how many parts this series is going to be because I'm still going through my notes and trying to ascertain what I feel would be of help to you, our listener. And then after we have the AI discussion, which I'm flying solo for, then Andy Strickler's back. And he continues to let us know why this year was a challenge. By the way, I talked to a lot of people about this year, whether it was the hardest. Some said it was absolutely the hardest. Some said last year was even harder with the shock they got with international students not being able to come over and some of the threats to government funding. That tended to be, I'd say, more, I borrowed this term from Andy, those at the top of the food chain were some of the ones that found last year even harder. But the masses, the bulk of people either said this was the hardest year. Some of them just said the last few years have been so hard altogether that they're all kind of a blur. So Andy will be talking to us about that. It's a 3-parter. You'll hear part 2 or 3. And then you definitely want to kind of come back next week because he does a deep dive for us on predictive modeling. He goes deeper than we've ever had on this podcast. And I know our listeners to know you guys are going to love that. But I think today's going to be really good as well. So without any further ado, let's dive into how AI is impacting how admission officers practice their craft. Now, my approach to this is going to almost be like a running stream of consciousness. I'm just going through my notes here, and they're pretty considerable. So some of these are going to be things that counselors said, because remember, this is a mixture of counselors and admission officers. So one counselor talked about how they're helping students create agents that are literally helping students brainstorm for their essays through creating agents. And one person developed an app on that process. One of the other counselors is going to be presenting at NACAC conference on how AI is impacting admissions, both from a counseling standpoint and from an admission standpoint. There was a conversation of this thing has changed so much in a year. Somebody was just blown away by how much change has occurred. Another person brought up there's so much confusion with students about what they can do or they can't do that it's really confusing. But then another person said that we all should be looking at both at Caltech, Emory, and Brown because they have such explicit and thorough statements about what's appropriate and inappropriate that we should go to the websites and check out Emory, Brown, and Caltech. And I think Emory and Brown, most people were the most enthusiastic about those 2, but all 3 of them were kind of praised for giving us some guides to help us to know what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. There was confusion even amongst the group. Some people were throwing out things and asking questions like, is it appropriate for this? And then other people would give feedback like, yeah, that's totally appropriate use of AI. What about this? And other people would say, yeah, or no. There was a lot of talk on the counseling side about how using Zoom AI note taker and how families love it. Some said it's great because it's like a track record of everything. And if someone says something wasn't brought up, it's like, no, you can kind of have a record of it there. But then other people didn't agree with that. They thought it reduces the candor. People aren't quite as willing to open up when they feel like, there's a recording going on. So there was a kind of a nice little hot debate on that topic. One person brought up how they are using AI almost as a counselor, and how it's really helpful. And a lot of people agreed with that. I never really even thought of that, to be honest. So they gave an example of let's say a student is doing a group project and they find they're doing all the work and the rest of the group is not carrying their weight. And they might not even get a good grade on this group project because they're doing all the work. They're turning to AI and saying, what should I do? This is what's going on. And a number of people said it's been incredibly helpful because it's always positive. It's never judgmental. And it has a lot of wisdom. And then a lot of people on the college side kind of chimed in and agreed and talked about that. Another person talked about how when they craft their emails and maybe they feel like this one might have a little bit of an edge, they go to AI and say, can you check my tone, or can you give me this tone, and how it improves their emails and makes the tone, less contentious if it's more of a controversial communication piece. And then people talked about a couple AI platforms out there. There was mixed reviews. Some of these are charging a fortune. These are big in Silicon Valley and big in Seattle. One's called Addy, that's kind of taken off. And there was a lot of controversy along that. There was a lot of talk about how admission officers are using AI in different ways. So one of the things that came up was the growth of AI and how it's just growing. One used the term of mission creep. It feels okay now, but where are we going with this? So there was talk about Advisory and how helpful that is, and how helpful Advisory has been, in the process for the college. But then they're like, okay, this is great, but where's Advisory going? And so let me tell you a little bit more about Advisory. So Advisory is kind of a core AI engine, sometimes called Eddy AI. It's one of the fastest growing processing tools that colleges and universities are starting to use as they integrate AI into their admissions workspace. Because what it does is it operates like a behind the scenes reader in University of Enrollment. And it helps with a number of things. So the thing that was talked about how it's helping the most, well, a few things. One of them was taking all the different transcripts and recalculating the GPA to a standard 4.0 GPA. So one person I talked about, it was nobody on the team wants to go through tens and tens of thousands of transcripts and do the recalculation. And sometimes schools have readers that do that, but some don't. So some schools were having admission officers do that. And with Advisory, they don't have to do that. It recalculates the GPA for them, and people absolutely love that. And so it's been able to help schools a lot with recalculating of the GPA. Another thing that people praised about it was how it's helped with their transfer process. It's really been great as a tool to help with transfer students. And they found it to be really, really accurate with the applicant when they just upload the PDF or they scan the image of the transcript, and it automatically digitizes the entire document. And so it's gotten rid of that admissions check. I mentioned the GPA calculation. Some use it for rigor scoring. Some use it for predictive course equivalency. This is one of the biggest features that it does, cross-referencing past courses against thousands of other courses. One of the counselors talked about that as well. They've been uploading their whole IB curriculum in, and they've said it's been really, really helpful for analyzing course descriptions, credit hours. And then it can function as a CRM, and it's got system integration into Slate, into Salesforce, into like other. That's still basically Slate is really the main thing everybody's using for their CRM. So they love that aspect of things. Now, there was some misgivings though, because there was talk about, is this thing going to go so far that we in good conscience can't even really say that we're doing holistic admissions? And the example that they gave was some of the other features that are being used are taking the recommendation letters and summarizing them. And, sometimes rec letters can come in like, a couple of pages. Nobody has time for that. So summarizing the rec letters down into like a succinct paragraph. They talked about how it's taking the personal statement and other writing and summarizing it once again into like a succinct paragraph, making their reading more efficient. Now, I don't want to make it sound like everybody's doing this, but some people were. And they said it has been incredible time saver. That's helped them with work-life balance, that helped them with diminished staffs. So it's not going anywhere. But as one person said, you can see the mission creep, and as it grows. At what point do we in good conscience say, can we still say we're really doing whole person admissions when more and more and more is going over to 80? He said, you can just see where this is going with AI. Other people talked about how it's been incredibly helpful at explaining the ROI of what they have to offer to different groups. So they can just put all this information in and say, give us messaging for rural students. And it's amazing at what it does. Give us messaging for affluent students from the suburbs, and it's a different messaging. Give us messaging for first-gen students, and it's different messaging. And they're really impressed. Some people talked about how they're using it to divide their territories up and assign different people to different territories based on lots of data. Some people talked about how it's making their recruitment a lot more efficient. Some people talked about how they're putting all this stuff into the different language learning models and it's improving their presentations. One person talked about something that used to take days and days and days. Now they put it in and they couldn't even believe how impressive it was. And then they go back and forth, literally talking to it for 2 to 3 hours. Tweak this, tweak that, tweak that. It does it all. And they have this gangbuster presentation that's literally saves days. So there's no going back. Now, the question that came up where there was some of the most debate was on the topic of, do you foresee a time when admission offices will actually make decisions based on AI? And believe it or not, the room was mixed on that. It wasn't like an absolutely not. Now, nobody's doing that as of yet, but people foresaw a time when that was going to happen. They really did. And, I had a conversation where I'm still thinking about this a lot because I was mostly bringing the perspective of my families, right, to this conversation. So, I brought up the fact that I'm just going to tell you right now, people will be livid if they feel like a machine is making the decision and not a real person. And so even if you think that adds to some efficiency, you might want to think about that because this is the term I used. That juice may not be worth that squeeze. Now, I'll tell you what I heard when I said that. There was some agreement. Some of the people said, yeah, I agree with that. But one person said something that really has me thinking a lot. They said, that sounds, because I even went on, I said, I don't think you're going to be very happy when the New York Times is calling you and doing a big expose if you go there. And one person said, I don't think that would decrease applications at all at a certain group of schools. For there's a certain group of schools that the only way they will lose applications is if they become harder, if they become really easy to get into. As long as they're hard to get into, the public is going to want to go. That was kind of fascinating because as I started thinking about it more and more and more, they're probably right. They're probably right. Is that going to stop someone, think of your whatever your brand name school is, from wanting to go? They'll be mad for a while, but are they really not going to go? Friends, this completes the first half. We hope you'll join us next week for the final part. Friends, let's transition now and hear part 2 of 3 with Andy Strickler, as Andy and I talk about why 2026 was so challenging in admissions and what we can learn from it.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, we've reached part 2 of 3 of my interview with Andy Strickler, and in part 2, we continue our conversation about the reasons why Connecticut College is adding early action. We talk about some of the creative ways colleges are trying to yield students, and we talk about some of the creative ways colleges are recruiting students. We have a really honest conversation about, are these practices fair for both parties, or do they cross the line, and are they not student-centric? And friends, some of the things I say are probably not going to land well with everyone, but one thing you can always count on from me, I call balls and strikes how I see them, and Andy's the same way, which is why I love doing these deep dives on college admissions with Andy every 3 months. Listen and enjoy.
Part of the reason for EA for us was that there are so many students and families where anxiety and stress and concern about the college thing is so prevalent that they want to get stuff out early and they want to hear early. There are not that many folks who want to wait until March of their senior year to get the bulk of their decisions.
Definitely true.
And as a result, we're just trying to take a good chunk of kids who would apply regular decision and give them the option of hearing before the semester break for us, but December to January, here before the Christmas and New Year holiday, and put information in their hands in an earlier time frame so they can, be a little lower stress, not have to wait so long to figure out the places that they're really very interested in. And it gives us more of an opportunity to get them on campus in a critical way in the months of January and February. And have them start thinking seriously about us instead of waiting. I mean, this year we've released on March 7th, which is 2 weeks early for us. But boy, that's still really late in a student's senior year. Yeah. For many students who just are like, I want to get this done. That's their perspective.
I think it's smart. And I think it's smart. It looks like your plan is to release before the January.
100%.
Yeah, because, a lot of schools do early action, but they're doing rollouts in mid to late January.
Nope.
But we, on the counseling side, we love schools that release decisions before January, because what happens is kids say, well, I know that I like Connecticut College more than 3 or 4 schools I was going to apply to in regular, so now I don't need to apply to them.
Exactly. And part of our research process for this was talking to not only independent counselors, but high school-based counselors, and saying, all right, one, what do you think of EA for us?
Yeah.
What are the pluses? What are the minuses? And what advice would you give us? And every single one said, make sure you release before the Christmas and New Year holiday.
Yeah.
Do that. It's just way easier and way better for the student in the counseling community than it is to wait until January.
The only thing I'm sure you're going to wonder is, how many apps are we going to get, and what kind of pressure is that going to put on the reading load?
That's why we were here. And part of the reason why historically our ED deadline is November 15th,
which was
this
smart.
year, we've moved it up to November 1st to align with our EA deadline, which gives us an additional 2 weeks to do some reading, to do committee, and most importantly, to sort of shape that EA group depending on the volume of apps that we get. These are all sort of things we got to work out as we sort of do this for the first time.
Have you seen what Auburn does with their decision releases?
I know they're really bad at football right now. What do they do?
They do something that, some people don't like it, but I think it's pretty creative. They have EA, but they have multiple release dates within EA, and it's based on when you get it in.
Okay.
So it kind of, in some ways, it's an incentive. It's a definite incentive for people to get stuff in early, which helps everybody. Right. But it also gives the admission office some flexibility if you get slammed. a little
Right.
bit. It can be confusing for people. So some people don't like it for that reason.
Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
I see the advantage to the institution
Right.
of getting apps in earlier and then somewhat being able to control your workflow.
Yeah, we're going to do that on the financial aid side.
Okay.
So
there
we
you go.
plan on batch releasing admission decisions somewhere between mid and late December before we break for the semester. But then we'll let folks know that we're going to close the loop and send out financial aid award letters by February 1st, pending a completed application. And then we're going to roll those out sequentially in the month of January based on those who complete their financial aid apps the earliest.
Well, I have heard from some schools that they have a higher yield with their EA than their RD
Great.
apps, but
Great.
based on a couple different concepts. One is a more serious person about you gets things in earlier.
Yep.
And then the other thing, which you alluded to, which is we have some time to do some cultivation, some targeting now. We could get them, try to get them on campus, have a student reach out, invite them to a panel, do a reception in the area. And so we can spike that interest and increase our yield. But, and I can say this publicly because he said it right in my interview. Do you know Greg Zeiser by any chance?
At Elon? I've met him, yes.
Like him. He's a straight shooter.
I hear he's a great guy.
He's a great guy.
I have a really good friend who works for him and says he's awesome.
He's a great guy. Great guy. But when I interviewed him and we got into talking about this, he's what probably came as close to you on transparency. And that's the ultimate compliment. You know? Yeah. Like, for example, he did an interview with me on why they are trying to drive their admit rate down. And it's nothing. And it has to do with the fact that some people are not considering us right now that we think we'd be great for.
Right.
Yeah, because of that.
Yeah.
And so that's not something everybody will say. But one thing he said was their EA, because they're another one with EA, ED, their EA yield is lower than their RD yield. So it's not a given.
Correct.
It's not a given.
Correct. I've talked to a handful of folks who have EA and have said the same thing. So we're not
counting.
We're not banking on this as a yield thing. Yeah. We're trying to work with families in terms of trying to get information to them earlier and spread the workload out for us a little bit more evenly, because historically when we release March 7th, I mean, it's a level of intensity for reading and committee and shaping, but then it's a 6-week sprint to May 1st in terms of yield activities, and spreading that out over a little period of time will ease with our post May 1. We're all getting sick and taking a million vacation days and burnout issues.
You know what else I'm seeing out there, Andy, is a lot of creativity coming into the space on increasing yield.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that?
See, I think it's a mixture of creativity and resources.
And aggression.
That,
and I'd throw some aggression in there.
Yeah, I just think that some folks are spending some resources on some lavish, types of things that they'll mail to all their admits to get them excited about their institution. And there's a level of creativity that goes there. But there's also a level of resource that allows for creativity and creative expression when it comes to trying to yield students.
Are you aware of what Case is doing this year?
No. What do you got?
They are taking their EA apps, which were high flyers,
right,
that they would have taken an ED,
right,
but they're worried about yielding because I know this Case gets a lot of really strong kids because I have that EA app, but it's a lot of times they're not the school of first choice,
right?
But they're a great school. My kids have loved it there.
Oh yeah.
But here's what they're doing: they're offering you ED2 with your merit package.
Okay.
So they're flipping your EA to an ED2 with merit.
But the student needs to opt into that, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. But they're not, they're not asking you if you want to do that. They're offering that to you.
Right.
So
interesting.
Yeah. And so.
Well, it's similar to what Chicago has done with their EA population. Have you heard what Chicago did?
Well, I know Chicago has done a lot of different things. I know
Yeah, but they would take their EA apps and defer them, and then 48 hours later, send them an email, say, by the way, if you convert to ED2, we'll take you. And it's a way to sort of transition folks from a non-binding EA to a binding ED.
I think Tulane was the one who really did that. The one time they talked about getting 190 kids in 1 year off of that.
Right.
But the interesting thing is Case gives pretty generous merit for sort of a school of their stature. And so from their standpoint, you know what, if you're probably not going to come with $30,000 plus, and I'm not putting a number on it, but I certainly,
you're just pulling something out. I gotcha.
I certainly have seen lots of aid awards from them that have exceeded that. I'll put that, So probably a pretty good way of taking the temperature, whether that kid was in play or not, and that could help some of your strategy. But I know some people don't like it. Like, listen, I don't want to apply ED. You're trying to I get why it's controversial.
Right.
But it kind of, to me, seems like a good balance between the needs of the institution and being sensitive to a family. Because a family doesn't have to take it. And if they're concerned about the money part of ED, they've probably taken the money part off the table.
Yeah.
And they still reserve the right to still offer you. They're not saying this is the only circumstance whatsoever we would ever admit you. Right.
And we tend to think about things, especially in the last 8 to 10 years, thinking about the broader context of American society. We've started to identify things in a much more sort of binary fashion. Good, bad, black, white, right versus left, all this stuff, right? When in reality, they're just lots of shades of gray, and there's much more nuance. So thinking about, what Tulane or Chicago or what Case has done, you could very easily look at this in a binary fashion and say, well, this is just good for the institution. That's why they're doing it. But if you take a step back and want to think about it in a more nuanced fashion, there are plenty of arguments you can make where doing these things is actually good for the student as well. I am putting information in your hands that you can opt to say yes to, which might benefit you and your family and your level of stress. That, hey, wait a minute, this is a way which I could get this thing over with a school that at least I liked enough to apply EA. I know what the money's going to be. Boom, boom, boom. Why not? Instead of waiting on a whole bunch of crapshoot, super selective RD decisions that are, 6 to 8 weeks down the road. So I think these things are super nuanced in nature, and kudos to Case for doing this.
I mean, I completely agree with you on things being nuanced, and I think it's a really important point that you make. I have a slightly different take on the explanation. Like, most families don't like these things at all, because they don't feel student-centric to them, and but my take is that decisions you make need to work for both parties. Like the institution has to preserve its health.
Right.
And if you're strengthening your institution by bringing in stronger students and making sure you meet your enrollment goals, that's part of your mission too. It's almost like you can't go to the restaurant and have the incredible 5-star meal and expect it to be $10 or $5. Right. It has to, the cost is going to have to work for the institution that's getting the top of the line products and paying the top of the line staff and having the top of the line facilities. So I kind of see it when you talk to families, they hate all this stuff most of the time because it feels like they're just thinking about themselves. But I feel you have a right as an institution to do things that strengthen your institution and make your institution stronger. You don't want to cross that line where you're just not being, there's a line you can cross. We just took a question. In fact, it's literally on a podcast that went live today. A listener sent in a question that said, why is my college student getting recruitment mail from somebody that they turned down? To me, that's a little icky.
Totally.
That's a little icky.
Totally.
The student didn't reach out. And now you're getting that. Are you happy? We really liked you a lot. We thought you were. So that to me is no, that's not working fairly for both parties. At least that's my take.
I totally agree. And this practice now of communicating with last year's admits who turned you down to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And reaching out to them and saying, by the way, have you thought about transferring?
How widespread is that, Andy?
I don't think it's super widespread, but I could name a couple of institutions that do it and are pretty aggressive doing it. And it absolutely sits poorly with me because they looked at you, they applied to you.
Yeah.
They know who you are and they chose someone. It's like me, I ask a young lady from Radnor High School to the prom.
Right.
And she decides to go to prom with someone else.
Yeah.
Me continuing to ask her, it's like, listen, she already made her choice.
Yeah.
I got to respect that.
No.
And that,
especially when, you got the transition of the new year and maybe it's missing mom's cooking, might have roommate struggles, you're paying off some.
Yeah. No, I don't like it either.
That crosses the line.
Now, one of the things we're navigating right now when we're talking about EA, and this is a real conversation that's going on here, is for the first time we're going to end up deferring probably some fairly significant numbers of students from EA to RD.
Yeah.
Now, historically, in ED, if someone applies early decision to Connecticut College, it's been my perspective and it's been our position. If you're willing to apply early decision to Con, I think you deserve a yes or no answer. And we very rarely defer a domestic student in early decision. And if we do, that student, no, we don't wait list. If we defer a student from ED, that student will get a phone call from me saying, hey, listen, tomorrow night, you're going to get deferred. And this is why. We did it twice this year, actually, believe it or not. We did it once in ED1 and once in ED2. Both students had a conversation with me. We, believe it or not, we actually ended up taking both students in RD.
Well, they probably appreciated your call, too.
Yeah. And the funny thing is I was actually at one of our admitted student open houses this spring, and I'm finished my opening session, and I'm talking to a family, and a student comes walking up to me, and I'm only going to use his first name. But I have his first and his last name. It's here in my cell. I text him, he texts me. But he comes walking up to me and he goes, I'm Max so-and-so.
Sure.
And my eyes got big, and I just instinctively reached out and gave him a big hug.
Good
because
for
he
you.
and I had had about 5 or 6 conversations after his ED app. And I called him. I said, you're going to get deferred. This is why. This is what I need you to work on academically between now and RD. And he did everything he needed to do. And I'm just thrilled that it worked out, But we're wrestling with this like, oh my gosh, now we're going to have to defer probably a sizable number of students from EA to RD. And how do we navigate that? How do we model it? How do we engage them? Do we treat them exactly the same as our RD kids once they end up in our RD pool? So these are some of the considerations that are going into our thinking right now as we're planning for what next year is going to look like.
I have to say something, and I cast no judgment, different schools for different folks. I had, my oldest daughter went to Davidson. My youngest daughter went to UGA. They both had great experiences. Some kids love big schools, some love small schools. But what you just heard from Andy is the small school advantage. Like, he just said he had 5 to 6 conversations with a prospective student, and he's the chief enrollment officer at a school with a couple thousand students. That's the personal touch that you do get at the smaller school. And I hope listeners didn't miss that. If that's something that appeals to you, you might want to look at smaller residential-based schools as one of your options and see if they're a good fit.
And the 2 students we deferred, Max and David, I know both of them by sight at this point. They both have my contact information. If they have questions, they just hit me, and I'm like, all right, we got you. Because, we don't necessarily want to defer out of ED because, if you say we're your first choice, I tend to believe you should get a yes or no answer. But it's going to be a little different next year when we're deferring larger numbers out of EA into RD.
Friends, this concludes the end of part 2. We hope you join us next week for the final part of the interview with Andy Strickler. And you're not going to want to miss that, because Andy says some things about predictive modeling that nobody has said here in over 640 episodes. On Thursday's episode, we'll have a question from a listener that Hillary joined me and answer, and it's from Jason Craig, who's hosting our event in Minneapolis. Thanks, Jason. And Jason wants to know, why is there so little talk about colleges with less than 500 students? What are the pros and cons to these colleges? So that's a great question. We never had it before. And so Hillary and I will tackle that. And then I'm going to fly solo and take a question from a mom about HBCUs that came in and how they've become a lot more competitive and got to get into, and any tips that we have for her in regard to that. I'll take that one. And then we have a new college spotlight. I am interviewing a student, and it's Prior Gilbert, who's at Wake Forest. It'll be a 2-parter. It's going to be my last student interview for a little while because I have so many interviews lined up with school leaders on the College Spotlight side. And friends, for the next few weeks, I'm going to close with a Steve Jobs quote. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, made a number of profound, sagacious statements. And I close you out today with one of them. Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. Steve Jobs. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stylionos Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.